It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And it is 2100 hours. A very good evening to you. A warm welcome. This is Africa World Hour on Channel Africa, the African perspective, bringing you 60 minutes of the very latest news developments from the heart of Africa to all corners of the globe. And today the action was indeed live from the continent, specifically in Ekurhuleni in South Africa, where the social summit of the G20 kicked off with much jibes against those who were critical of it. So we'll tell you about what happened there, and we'll bring you some of the perspectives of the discussions that were discussed there, and we'll also tell you about what else is happening on the continent. A very good evening to you. I am Tsepiso Makwetla. Let's take a look at your top stories this hour.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
More than 600 undocumented migrants have been arrested in Mayfair, Johannesburg, South Africa. The joint operation was led by the Johannesburg Metro Police, the South African Police Service and Home Affairs officials. SABC reporter Musa Mhlongo reports.
Approximately 217 women and 413 men were detained after they were found without valid documents. Home Affairs is processing all those detained. Johannesburg Public Safety MMC Mgcini Ntshaku says working together allows law enforcement agencies to tackle crime more effectively. He's promised more operations across the city to make communities safer.
The head of humanitarian and aid organization Gift of the Givers, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, has sought clarity, or rather to clarify that his organization did not break any law in helping the refugees that flew into South Africa from Gaza without following proper immigration protocols. This follows the uproar after the arrival of a group of 153 Palestinian refugees who landed in South Africa on a chartered flight from Kenya to seek asylum. Suleiman said the Gift of the Givers were called in to assist the refugees after they had arrived in the country.
First of all, the Gift of the Givers did not bring this plane to South Africa. People need to understand that. We were called in to assist the refugees because we heard they were in the airport in South Africa and basically helping the government to take care of the refugees. But this is what we do. We benefit nothing. We're an NGO. We look after lives. We save lives in the country and outside the country. We take care of refugees, ordinary people, people in our country, outside the country. We intervene in 47 countries. We assist people, taking away pain and suffering. This is what we do. We don't get any benefit out of it.
Police in southern India say they've killed one of the country's most wanted Maoist rebel leaders. The police chief in Andhra Pradesh state say Madhavi Hidma was killed in an armed confrontation along with at least 6 other rebels. The BBC's Sanjay Dasgupta has those details.
Madhavi Hidma is suspected to have been involved in a number of deadly attacks, including an infamous daytime ambush in Chhattisgarh state in 2013, in which 27 people were gunned down. Among the dead were prominent politicians and the leader of a feared paramilitary outfit with a reputation for targeting Maoists and their suspected sympathizers in the poverty-stricken forested tracts of central India that was once considered their heartland. The Maoists are clearly on the back foot. Many have surrendered. Those who haven't are being wiped out by aggressive police action.
Nigeria is grappling with dramatic escalation of violent attacks on both its security forces and civilians. In the country's northeast, the radical group, the Islamic State West Africa, or ISWAP, claims to have executed a senior Nigerian army officer captured during a deadly ambush on a military convoy, marking an unprecedented escalation in the 16-year insurgency. In the northwest, Nigeria gunmen also attacked a government girls' boarding school in Maga town in Kebbi State, killing the vice principal and abducting 25 students, girl children. Channel Africa's Nigeria correspondent Jonathan James Lamogan explains the escalation of the attacks in the country.
ISWAP is the Islamic, of course, Islamic State in West Africa, and that has been one of the leading terrorist organizations that has continued to showcase terror in Nigeria, and they have continued to gain notoriety over the years, and their pattern has stayed consistent. They're constantly trying to entrench what they say is an Islamic caliphate, and they have had moments where they've taken territories and moments where the Nigerian military has been able to push them back.
And finally, political analyst and academic Dr. Mary De Haas from the KwaZulu-Natal Violence Monitor has told South Africa's Parliament Ad Hoc Committee that she found the resources spent on crimes related to politicians absurd when people in general find it difficult to access justice. The committee was established to look into allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system. De Haas explained why she thought the political killings task team needed to be disbanded.
I see people dying and the police doing nothing, and yet we're spending this money on this team. I think it's outrageous, quite frankly, when ordinary people can't get justice, they want closure, they don't get it. You don't even hear about them being killed. They're killed all the time in rural areas. No one's paying attention and doing anything special for them. Why are we doing something special for politicians?
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we start with this. The African Panel of Experts chairperson Trevor Manuel has made a call on the global rating agencies to refrain from unfairly discriminating against African economies. Manuel was speaking at the handover ceremony of the G20 Africa Expert Panel report in Johannesburg, South Africa on Tuesday. Manuel says the continent presents a lot of opportunities amid its challenges, and these agencies are not being fair to the continent. Tsepiso Makwetla reports.
The African Panel of Experts chairperson Trevor Manuel says the G20 Africa Expert Panel report is a work in progress that goes beyond just a report. He says the panel set a benchmark for themselves on how they will improve prosperity on the African continent, among other things detailed in the report. Manuel says the panel has identified a multitude of challenges on the continent, one being the issue of debt and how many African countries are under debt pressure. In the same breath, Manuel has made a call on global rating agencies to be fair on how they rate countries on the African continent.
There are some issues that have excited Minister Godongwana greatly, and amongst these is the operations of the ratings agency. What we are calling for is for ratings agencies to declare the metrics that they use, so that when you're comparing one country with the other, you can understand exactly what the basis is. And if it can't be supported by empirical evidence, then I think we have to call out the ratings agencies for unfairly discriminating against African economies.
President Cyril Ramaphosa welcomed the report, saying that some ideas will be taken forward beyond the G20.
And the idea that you put on the agenda that there should be a borrowers club. There is a Paris club, a club of lenders, and there's no reason why we should not have a borrowers club, where countries that borrow money get together and share best practice and share experiences. So that is, in my view, a really good proposal which we would like to see taken forward.
The long-anticipated leaders' meeting is fast approaching after holding numerous meetings among government, business, labor and civil society, among others. This year, South Africa will host the finale Heads of State meeting on the 22nd and 23rd of November 2025. Tsepiso Makwetla, SABC News, Johannesburg.
And now let's quickly give you an update on what has happened in Nigeria. So we did mention that there is an escalation of violence, political violence that is occurring there. And we mentioned that in the latest case, there has been a case of 25 girls who have been abducted. Now, Nigerian security forces are intensifying a search for those 25 girls abducted by gunmen from a boarding school in northwestern Kebbi State, the latest school abduction. And there is widespread insecurity that continues to plague the country. Parents who gathered at the school said 2 girls had managed to escape their abductors on Monday evening. Police said men armed with rifles stormed the government girls' comprehensive secondary school in the town of Maga. That's around 4 a.m. local time or 3 a.m. GMT on Monday, arriving on motorcycles in an apparently well-planned attack. So most of the students and those kidnapped are Muslim, the dominant religion in the region, and investigations are ongoing, and security operations, as we mentioned, also ongoing to find those abducted young ladies.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And we take you to the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where authorities say at least 29 people, including patients, were killed when rebels of the Allied Democratic Forces attacked a health center and nearby villages in Lubero territory in North Kivu province. Officials recovered 23 bodies at the referral health facility in Byambwe. That's among them 11 women. The bodies. The center also had part of its building set ablaze, along with several homes in surrounding villages. This latest attack comes just weeks after another killing of about 20 civilians in the same territory, blamed on the ADF. We speak now to our DRC correspondent Jimmy Shukrani Bakomera to find out exactly what is happening. Jimmy, a very good evening to you. So, what do we know so far about this attack and how it unfolded?
Yes, what we know is this attack happened in past days. People have course and its territory area controlled by the government of the Congolese army.
Okay, Jimmy, let's do this. Unfortunately, the line keeps on cutting because of the poor connection. Let us call you in just a moment so that our listeners can have the appreciation of those developments and your reporting on it. And we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back in just a moment.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Le monde entier a les yeux rivés sur Johannesburg. Les dirigeants des plus grandes économies mondiales se réunissent pour prendre des décisions qui façonneront les nations, les marchés et l'avenir. Vous savez déjà que Channel Africa sera sur place pour vous proposer des débats, des analyses et des points de vue essentiels. Suivez le sommet du G20 les 22 et 23 novembre en direct de l'Afrique. Restez connectés sur Channel Africa.
Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
All right, we hope we will be able to reconnect with our colleague in the DRC. First, let's catch up on some news on International Fraud Awareness Week. So that's this week, and experts say online scams are rising worldwide as criminals use artificial intelligence and stolen personal data to deceive consumers. Cyber breaches, identity fraud, and sophisticated impersonation scams are expanding across the global digital economy. And Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabanga has more insights on that.
Across the world, people are facing a surge in digital fraud, fueled by easier access to personal information and new AI-powered tools that make scams harder to detect. Dr. Jerry Cherry, head of business integrity at Santam, says cyber criminals are becoming increasingly advanced.
Fraudulent scams are on the increase. The reason for the increase is because of the readily available personal information which is available on the dark web due to the numerous cyber breaches we see happening every day. Further, fraudsters are starting to use AI tools to perpetrate fraudulent scams. They use AI tools to draft legitimate-looking messages to entice victims to share personal information.
He says one of the fastest growing threats globally is impersonation fraud, where criminals use stolen identities to open accounts or create false credit records.
An example of a fraudulent scam is an impersonation. An impersonation is used to create credit records or open accounts on unsuspecting victims. As we go into the festive season, I anticipate these fraudulent scams will increase. Victims normally become less vigilant as we go into the festive season, and that is when fraudsters are most rife in terms of perpetrating the frauds.
Cherry warns that scammers use emotional pressure to force victims into revealing sensitive details.
There are various different types of frauds, for example, holiday scams, pet scams, and so forth. I urge consumers to be extra vigilant in terms of sharing information over the phone, and you will note a recent trend where the fraudster who's making the call exercises pressure on the unsuspecting victim in terms of telling them that they are going to lose vast amount of money if they do not share the information. I urge victims that when you receive such calls to cut the call immediately and rather contact the bank directly. Do not share any personal information telephonically.
He adds that fraudsters often create crisis scenarios to manipulate people into acting quickly.
Fraudsters also use crisis scenarios by informing unsuspecting victims that the fraudster is actively stealing money of their accounts and urge and force the victims to share this information. We should never share information over the phone.
With scams becoming increasingly global and sophisticated, experts say staying vigilant, especially around the holidays, is critical. With Black Friday also around the corner, consumers are advised to avoid pressure tactics, verify all unexpected calls, and never share personal information with strangers. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we're going to give it another try, find out the details of that attack in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We understand that authorities found the bodies of at least 29 people where rebels of the Allied Democratic Forces attacked a health care center and nearby villages in Lubero territory. Our correspondent Jimmy Shukrani Bakomera joins us to give us the latest. Jimmy, just an update on what has happened and what has been the identified motive, if at all.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it was just at the night when the rebels attacked the locality of Biambwe, is one of the localities composed the territory of Lubero in the North Kivu province. So they killed a lot of people there, according to the government. But some government sources confirmed since when the attack had a place that it was only 20 people who have been killed, but from the recent deadly attack of the Allied Democratic Forces ADF, the numbers just have been rise to 20 to 30 people killed, including even 70 or 20% executed by the local referral. So For now, at the area where the attack held place, it's a panic because people have fled. Just one, of course, they are fearing to their own security, and the government is trying to call people to the calm, but there is no calm in Biambwe locality where the attack held place. For now, it's according to the civil society and local sources confirms that this about due to this attack, people have fled for some areas near this area, which they are consider maybe there is a security out of this Biambwe locality in Lubero. So for now, with 30% killed, among them, of course, the patient is talking they out.
And the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces, have they claimed responsibility for the attack? And is there a sense of this being a continuation of what some have described as a reign of terror on the civilians of the region by the ADF?
There is a video which is just circulating on the social media showing one element of Allied Democratic Forces talking about are them responsible of this attack, but of course we can't believe on 100%. But this area, of course, is an area which presents some high risk because it's not the first attack just which the Allied Democratic Forces has perpetrated in this area. So due to this video which are circulating in the social media showing a member of this terrorist movement, the Islamist movement, IDF, we can of course confirm that this attack is due to IDF because it's IDF the only group which is controlling this area, even if the government has some police and military there, but on high level, it's confirmed that it's the IDF which are the author of this attack in Biambwe locality.
Jimmy, we're going to leave it here, but we are definitely going to catch up with you soon when we have a better line to just also understand the intricacies of the security situation there and what the government is doing to try and stem the flow of violence in an already devastated area. That brings the time to 23 minutes past 9.
The world is watching Johannesburg. Leaders from the planet's biggest economies gather to make decisions that shape nations, markets, and futures. You already know Channel Africa will be right there, bringing you the conversations, insights, and analysis that matter.
The best is yet to come.
The G20 Summit from the 22nd to the 23rd of November. As it happens, from an African perspective, stay tuned to Channel Africa and get all the G20 analysis. At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa. In a major diplomatic breakthrough, the United Nations Security Council has adopted an US-sponsored resolution that endorses Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan for Gaza. The resolution passed with 11 votes in favor and abstentions from Russia and China, authorizes an international stabilization force to oversee Gaza's borders, demilitarization, and reconstruction. It also sets up a board of peace, a transitional governing body to be chaired by Trump, which will help coordinate governance aid and possible future path to Palestinian statehood. We're joined now from Washington to writer and political commentator Sam Husseini to talk about these developments. I was just thinking, Sam, firstly, welcome and thank you so much for speaking to us. The demilitarization and reconstruction, that being the center of how to achieve peace. This is something that has unraveled quite a lot of peace plans, and I'm just looking at what's happening on the continent at the moment. The Sudan, for instance, has been an example of that being a major, should I say, a stickler point on ensuring peace and ceasefire agreements.
Well, we're not talking about, first of all, we're supposed to be in a ceasefire, but Israel's killing people every day in Gaza, and it's continuing to escalate its attacks in the West Bank. We're not talking about meaningful reconstruction here. Israel is still in full control of over half of the west of Gaza, and they're making moves in that regard to do things there. The disarmament here is simply for Hamas. This is effectively a colonial attempt to disarm Palestinian factions while placing no meaningful constraints on Israel, which has been conducting a genocide for over 2 years. So this is a remarkable capitulation by the rest of the UN Security Council. Russia and China, as you note, abstained, but that means that they declined to use their vetoes in order to stop this, which they could have done. Trump used his leverage among the authoritarian governments, Arab governments, in order to make this happen with their choreographed attempts. This all happened, I should note, after Petro, the leader of Colombia, talked about using Uniting for Peace, whereby the General Assembly can take control of an issue when the Security Council has failed to live up to its responsibilities for peace and security. And I believe that this attempt by Trump was a very sophisticated attempt to undermine that possibility. The Uniting for Peace mechanism has been used successfully in the past. It's played a significant role in getting sanctions on apartheid South Africa, for example, and the same should be happening now with respect to Israel.
And I'm just looking at the detail of the fact that President Trump himself will be heading that governing body, that board of peace, and that is going to help coordinate governance, aid, and a possible future path to Palestinian statehood. Just judging from President Trump's rhetoric, his actions in the recent past, particularly when it comes to ending violence against Palestinians and Palestinians being killed while trying to access aid, is he the right person to man or chair this board?
Absolutely not. And the other person who's been named regarding this board is Tony Blair, who's largely responsible for the devastation of the Iraq War, which is, I should note, part of the answer to the question as to where are the Arab regimes. The Arab regimes that could have challenged the U.S. were attacked by the U.S. Iraq, Syria, Libya, and so on. Every Arab government has been decapitated that could challenge U.S. dominance in the region, working hand in glove with Israel. And Trump and his son-in-law Kushner have talked extensively about viewing this as a quote-unquote investment opportunity. They're talking about creating a massive surveillance system in Gaza, rather dystopian universe that could portend, the future of a great deal of humanity, because Palestine acts as a laboratory in terms of Israeli surveillance, control, manipulation, and so on, and then they export those dystopian technologies around the world. So this plan, and everyone from Palestinian civil society to the Palestinian armed resistance groups have all denounced this in the strongest terms. So I don't know precisely what these countries that might be involved with this so-called stabilization force are going to expect to happen here. But I think that a main goal is to pretend that Gaza is over, and then to, when this falls apart, pretend that it's because of Palestinian intransigence. But it's notable how we got here. Trump literally attacked shipping by Venezuela and Colombia, the two Latin American countries who are most outspoken. And we have the the forthcoming U.S. ambassador to South Africa saying that he's going to put the screws on to get South Africa to drop its genocide case against South Africa. So this is a full-on assault, we should make no bones about it, on international law, using bullying and violence by the U.S. government.
Very, very briefly, what are your thoughts on the UN's role in this of approving this plan? And the question also is whether or not Palestinian voices have been sought in the final resolution. Is the UN being used to pretty much authorize a plan that could have a very dangerous precedent in terms of endorsing diplomatic pressure and geopolitical bargaining?
Absolutely. When the U.S. representative's remarks at the UN yesterday, he basically said, vote for this or the ceasefire is over, so-called ceasefire is over, and Israel will basically go back to killing, 100 or 200 people a day. This is a brazen violation of the UN Charter. You're not supposed to have threats or use of force. So the UN has become an instrument of U.S. policy. In particular, I should say the UN Security Council. Again, the UN General Assembly could and should assert itself, as it occasionally has in the past. And it's not to totally condemn the entire UN system. You have heroic UN workers on the ground, UNRWA, who were viciously attacked by Israel, tortured into false confessions, prevented from distributing aid to the Palestinians, and so on. So the UN system isn't a monolith, but clearly the United States has succeeded in using the UN Security Council as an instrument of its effectively neo-imperial foreign policy here.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Political commentator Sam Husseini speaking to us about what's being called a major diplomatic breakthrough. The UN Security Council adopting a US-sponsored resolution that endorses Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan for Gaza.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa.
And at 27 minutes to 10, the G20 Social Summit getting underway at Birchwood Conference Center in Ekurhuleni, so not far from the airport. And speaking of taking to flight, it was a sentiment of whether or not South Africa would be able to launch a successful G20 summit with not only President Donald Trump not sending his major advisors, including Argentina, climbing on the boat or the coattails of that, and we saw China and Russia also not sending their people. But there was a lot that happened today and some excitement. So in doing so, we look at what happened at the G20 Social Summit. It started off, I must say, with one of the major discussions. That was a women's, newborns, children's and adolescents health event titled A Unifying Agenda for Global Progress. And in doing so, we confront one of the most urgent and devastating crises on the continent, one that rarely makes the headline. It claims more African lives than conflict, disease and outbreaks or natural disasters. Nigeria's maternal mortality rate, it remains among the highest in the world, behind the statistics of families shattered, futures erased and communities robbed of their potential. But there is also, of course, another story that about turning this crisis into a generational turning point, and we're talking here about it no longer being acceptable for women, children and adolescent health to be an episodic discussion, that it must be a priority. That's what came out of this discussion. So let's have that with one of the participants of the event that took place earlier on. Dr. Obinna Ibrahim is a senior technical advisor to the Minister of Youth Development in Nigeria, and as I mentioned, he took part in that G20 Social Summit panel discussion earlier this evening. A very good evening to you, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Obinna.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks, Lisa. I'm happy to be here today.
Okay, so perhaps let's just first start with that discussion. Nigeria accounts for one of the world's highest maternal and perinatal death burdens. What was your contribution, particularly in terms of Y20, to that discussion about a global agenda that is global but unifying for the global south?
Yeah, so thank you. So today at the summit, what I did was to highlight some of the things we are doing in Nigeria and how that can be serve as an example for other member states who were in the room and other stakeholders. So I shared an example of a program in Nigeria called the Maternal Mortality Reduction Innovation and Initiative, what we call MAMI project. So there was a change in leadership in the health sector in the country about 2 years ago. And as you had earlier said, the maternal mortality rate, the under 5 mortality rate, the neonatal mortality rates are very high in Nigeria. About almost every day, before the end of today, 146 women would have died. And that's an alarming number. So what the new leadership at the Ministry of Health did was to first identify where are those priority local government areas where these deaths are occurring. And they were able to identify 172 local government areas out of the 724 in Nigeria that are contributing over 50% of the deaths of women. And the second thing they did was to look into the data to find out, okay, what are the real drivers of women and child death in these areas? And they were able to narrow it down to 3 delays, what they call delay in seeking care, delay in reaching care, and delay in receiving quality care. And having identified this through data, then they had to then design specific intervention that addresses these 3 delays using a sector-wide, or what I call a multi-sectoral approach. And we are seeing some positive results. Just last week, before this the G20 Social Summit in Nigeria, we had the GIA, which is a review of the health sector. And some of these results we saw was a 17% reduction in maternal deaths in these high priority LGAs with high mortality rates, and a 12% reduction in newborn deaths. So really what this tells us, and something I shared today clearly, is that there are 3 key lessons that countries can learn at this time if they want to then bring down this death of our mothers and children. And the first lesson I shared was that countries need now to develop focused, data-driven, local, context-specific interventions. Right, that was the first lesson I shared. The second is they need to then increase domestic, public, and innovative financing. Why the third lesson is that there needs to be a multi-sectoral approach, and we need to then begin not to just speak to people in health, but people in finance, in national plan. And then the youths. Africa is a young population. We need their critical mass to advocate for more resources and the prioritization of maternal, child, newborn health.
So talking about that, Dr. Obina, let's just walk back to what the organizers of the summit, the Global Leaders Network and the partnership, arguing that women, children and adolescent health must be something that is institutionalized at particularly the fora of AU, at AU level and at the G20. If you could just talk a little bit more about what the GLN leaders' vision is about how countries should come together and do that.
Yeah, so the vision is that issues around maternal, newborn, child, adolescent health should be institutionalized. So it should be something that each time the heads of states meet, it should form part of their agenda. And we listened to various panelists, speakers speak about how historically issues around maternal and newborn health has been played down, especially when heads of states meet, who are likely men and who see other issues around governance as a top priority. So the discussion today was to highlight first the critical nature of this topic, which is that more of our women are dying, more of our children are dying, and it's have a ripple effect on families, on communities. And then there was also an economic case made today that investment in the health of women and children is not just throwing money. It actually has an economic advantage because it could return over about 20 times the amount invested. So the point is that, and then it's a human right. It's something that is a moral right, it's a human right. So there were speakers today and panelists really brought out clearly the need for greater investment, greater prioritization of women and child health. And the call is that the heads of states should see this and then make it a standing agenda whenever they meet. And we know that once this is done, we will translate to countries, member states, now prioritizing it nationally. And then we begin to see more funding for women and child health, more interventions that improve the health outcomes for women and children. And then obviously the countries will be better off because, as we saw today, once our women and our children are healthy, there is reduction in school absenteeism, there is greater productivity, and all this translates to more economic returns and good for countries. So that was what speakers today highlighted, and that is the push to the G20 leaders as they meet later this week.
Right, we're going to leave it there with you, Dr. Obina. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Obina Ibrahim is the Senior Technical Advisor to the Minister of Youth Development Nigeria, G20 Social Summit panelist of that event by the Global Leaders Network and partners that was looking at women, children, newborn and adolescent health, about uniting behind a common agenda, and that is putting the issue of WNCAH as a standing agenda item at both AU level and the G20.
At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa. And we look ahead to African Diaries this evening. Kitty is in the studio with us. What's coming up?
It's as usual, we check out the Dear Diary entries, and then we have the daily wrap up. And then for our first guest in the first hour, we have the Kwanele Foundation founder by the name of Sihle Sibisi, in light of gender-based violence. And in the second hour, we're going to be chatting to Layeva Starker, who is South African music therapist and researcher as well, in light of gender-based violence in terms of healing. She feels that, music therapy is the best way to deal with emotions and also to the journey of healing as well. So it's going to be a lovely show.
All right, and we look forward to it. Thanks a lot for that, Kitty. And that brings the time to 15 minutes to 10. We were hoping to discuss this yesterday, and we certainly have been looking to discuss it today. In Uganda, political tensions continuing to rise with under the spotlight Dr. Kizza Besigye, the opposition leader, former presidential candidate, and of course long-standing critic of President Yoweri Museveni. His wife Winnie Byanyima is calling for the immediate release of her husband, Dr. Besigye. Her appeal comes on the first anniversary of his detention, a year marked by legal delays, restricted access, and growing pressure on Museveni's government to justify his continued confinement. Rights groups say the case reflects a deeper pattern of political repression, while supporters argue Besigye's detention has become a symbol of Uganda's shrinking democratic space. Now, we are joined by Mayor Winnie Byanyima, who is the Executive Director of UNAIDS and wife of Dr. Kizza Besigye. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Byanyima. I was actually... I was speaking to someone today, and it's such an interesting reflection because we're talking about what a big person you are in the multilateral space, and you've had to endure this for so long because people just make the assumption that occupying the space that you do at such a high level, that these kinds of things don't come to you, they don't happen to you or your family. Your thoughts on that?
No, I think that in dictatorships, they carve their space and they dominate it and they do what they like and they're above the law. Uganda has turned into a dictatorship, and I don't think that this a strong sense of we are being watched, the international community is seeing us, they do what they want, and there's impunity in the country, and they also flout international rules.
And just looking back at this journey where it began, because and I'm just thinking back of reporting on Dr. Besigye for such a long time that it almost seems as if he has spent a great deal of his political life behind bars, being harassed, being tortured, and this kidnapping. What is your perspective when you think about what has happened and why it's happened?
It is true that since he disagreed with President Museveni, we were once on the same side, all of us, in a revolution to end dictatorship, to restore democracy in Uganda. But when things started moving back in the direction of dictatorship, he broke ranks and challenged him in a presidential election, 2001. And since then, you can say that it's been 25 years of persecution, of being criminalized, being humiliated, being assaulted, going into exile, returning. So yes, it's been, President Museveni has made the price of challenging him in a democratic election, the price so high that actually a few people now, serious contenders, enter the race against him. My husband has faced so much persecution, but he's such a resolved person. And now here he is facing treason, not for the first time. He faced it in 2005, 2006. He was exonerated. Once again, we expect that if the courts do their job, they'll find him innocent. But we're not sure. The courts have become also captured, and we see them acting according to his dictates. They make rulings and disagrees with the rulings and goes to Parliament and makes a law to nullify what the courts have just said.
And that was going to be my question. Is there a constitutional democratic landscape that exists for the judiciary to independently do their work? Has the situation improved with more people seeing the kind of legislative tools that Uganda has been using to, and I quote detractors, to really, imprison in terms of the freedom or the space that detractors have? Or has it just worsened because people have just accepted that they are in this constrictive space and there is no dissent that is allowed?
President Museveni led a revolution 40 years ago. He came to power through a revolution. We fought, we were his supporters, and we fought and brought him to power as our leader to restore the country to democratic rule. 40 years on, we've done a full circle, and he has established very personal rule. He has changed the constitution that we made, removing term limits, removing age limits. He has consolidated his power and taken power away from other institutions, including the judiciary and even the parliament, stacked it with his loyalists. So today we have totalitarian rule, and no institution functions except with his permission. That is the situation in Uganda. And it is in this context that some people, including my husband, have held out and said, no, people died, people shed their lives to bring back democracy, to bring justice, social justice. We will not give up. So it's a political question in Uganda that will be resolved politically, not through this court case of Kizza Besigye. Criminalizing him is just part of a political strategy.
And what would be that solution? What would be that brings about a change to what Uganda is confronting now? Because the question also then becomes, what changed from the ideals that President Museveni had carried, inculcated, from what you're saying, for this to be friends becoming foes, comrades being on opposite ends of a democratic pursuit?
Many revolutions have taken this direction, where a leader hijacks the revolution and turns and moves away from empowerment to a path of repression and personal rule. It's happened in quite a number of countries. It's happening in Uganda. And we are also seeing its impact on the region. 40 years in power, President Museveni has dominated the region, the Eastern Central African region, and we do see a tendency of those countries around the neighboring countries that were also struggling on the democratic path, now backsliding and kind of learning from the bad example of Uganda of democratic reversals. We're seeing democratic reversals in neighboring countries as well. So it's a question of people standing up and insisting on the vision they want of a democratic, of a country that's just, that's inclusive, a government that's just and inclusive. And we're seeing young people leading in this regard. We see them paying a high price. They stand up, they protest, they want to be heard. They are beaten, they are killed, they are abducted. So we're seeing a persecution of young activists. And this is, yes, another stage in our struggle for democratic governance. I am afraid these battles are generational. We've done our generation bit, and the younger generation is also leading now, but paying a high price. I'm sad about that.
Just to your mind, the criticism that the opposition is fragmented, is that a fair statement, or is it weakened, and weakened by what? Because some would dare...
It is a fact. It is a fact that the opposition is fragmented and continues to fragment. But it is not because the opposition are people who want to fragment and not to consolidate their power. No, it is the hand of the dictatorship that causes the fragmentation. It is the co-optation, it's the coercion, it is the use of lethal force that is making people break away from their parties, join the ruling party, and defections after defection, and people also walking away and becoming silenced forever and giving up on political contestation or even political participation. So we're seeing, when you have a dictator, it means they occupy the entire political space and they do not allow competitive politics. So one of the main ways that they stop competitive politics is to keep breaking up those forces that assert themselves and launch a serious challenge on the dictator. So we've seen every party, absolutely every party, from the oldest parties of independence to the newer parties of today, break up into 2, 3, or even 4 different parts. All of them, without exception. And so that is, again, a very classic strategy of authoritarian leaders to dominate the space. And so, yes, parties, we don't expect to have significant parties of the opposition that last long. They keep fragmenting.
Nima, just with that thought, that visual in mind of breaking down, breaking apart, your husband being a symbol of opposition and possibly in some eyes opposition movement in Uganda, what has been the impact on you and your family? And you mentioned the fact that he's very resolute, that he's never wavered. But clearly there is also a personal cost, because over the years we have seen pictures of what it's been like to stay the course.
Yes, there is a personal cost to him, that he has paid. Sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so he has paid a price at a personal level, but we really have to take it back to the political question, because it's not just him. In the prison where he is, when I go to see him, I find there some men who've been there up to 15 years and they've never even been in a courtroom. They have never been charged. They are sitting there waiting for their day in court, and it has never come. So there are so many other political prisoners. You only need to come out and speak and be consistent in what you're saying and disagree with the dictator, you'll end up in jail. So we look at this as a political question. We call on President Museveni to release all political... You see, he has now said that he does not intend to run again. After 40 years in power, he says he won't stand in the next election. This is his last election in January. And I am saying, I welcome that as a citizen of Uganda. But I say, take the next step, President Museveni, which is release all political prisoners, because they want to contribute to the transition from you to the next leader. There is a need to have a safe, democratic, transparent, inclusive transition from him after 40 years in power. That's a big change. And everyone, even those in prison, need to shape that. So release them. And third, enter dialogue, a facilitated dialogue, a dialogue that you don't dominate, that's neutrally facilitated, that's inclusive, that shapes the way to having an election that will bring us the leadership of the future. So I think that it's an opportunity he should seize, and build his legacy. 40 years, he's done some good things, but he's also hurt many people and made many mistakes. But all of that, Ugandans can forgive and move on if he gives Uganda the chance of a safe and democratic transition.
And in a word, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you believe that he is sincere, President Museveni, when he says he won't run again, that therefore spelling political reform in the offing and the change that you're looking for?
Well, actually, he has said this before, and he went ahead to change his mind. So I could say that he's said he won't run again, and he didn't. Maybe now but I want to believe him this time. I see that he's frail, he's much older. By the time of the next election, he'll be probably 90 years old or so. And I think he's aware of his own, the limitations of his body and his mind. So I want to believe him that he does want to retire. And therefore, I say, well done. Thank you for making that judgment, but do the next things, which are release all political prisoners, organize a national dialogue to shape the path to the next leader, the transition from yourself, 40 years rule, very personal rule, to a democratic dispensation. We need to change some things. We need to restore term limits. We need to take the military out of, and the security agencies out of running elections. We need to change some laws that he changed to suit himself. And then we can move towards a democratic dispensation. So there's an opportunity. I hope he will do what's right. And key to that is the release of Dr. Kizza Besigye and all other political prisoners.
Mewini Byanyima, we really do appreciate your time and your candor and opening up to us about your experiences and that of your husband, Executive Director of UNAIDS, and the wife of Dr. Kizza Besigye, speaking to us on his plight, but not only his plight, the plight of other political prisoners, of other opposition parties, members who have been prevented from speaking out against what she says was the authoritarian rule of President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. That's it from Africa World Hour. Thank you for joining us. Until the next time, good night. Up next, African Diaries with Kitty.
Conversations that touch the heart and inspire change. Here